This week on the Hollywood and Toto podcast, well, we just had an election and Hollywood lost bigly. What does that mean? Well, we'll shake things out in a minute. We chat with film producer Kevin Downs about his new movie, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. It's warm, it's witty, it's wise, and I don't know, you never know about these things, but it could be your next holiday tradition. And we share a new Netflix series which puts the rom and rom-com. It's about time.
Welcome to the Hollywood and Toto podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Score one for garbage. Well, Donald Trump won his second and, I guess, last major election victory. You may know, I'm sure you know this by now, but let's look at the Hollywood perspective. Now, a few months ago, it seemed like Hollywood was rather cautious about supporting Joe Biden in his run for a second term in office. Could be his age, could be the fact that they understood what was going on behind the scenes, but I read it a little bit differently. I thought, maybe Hollywood understands that being very aggressively political isn't a good idea when the industry is having so many complications. I mean, the streaming situation is not panning out from a fiscal point of view. Box office numbers are down. There's a job contraction behind the scenes. Movie productions are fleeing LA. Not a good situation. There's lots of reasons why Hollywood today is in trouble.
It's been losing money hand over fist for years now.
So I thought, hey, maybe the actors realize this and just don't want to keep pushing people away. You need everyone you can watching your movies and TV shows at this point. And I think I was wrong, because as soon as Kamala Harris was swapped in as the head of the presidential ticket on the Democrat side, well, Hollywood went all in for Kamala Harris. We've seen so many examples. I think maybe White Dudes for Harris was maybe the most extreme and silly example of just that effort toward getting her to be the next president. But, we saw endorsements, social media musings, all the different things that you typically see from Hollywood when it comes to a presidential campaign. And in the last few days before the election, their efforts got even more intense. We're talking Jennifer Aniston, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Harrison Ford, big stars coming out in support of Kamala Harris, and some music superstars as well, singing songs on her behalf. Not Beyonce, but other people like Lady Gaga. And it didn't work.
How do you design something you know is going to fail?
Kamala Harris lost in a pretty big fashion. So what happened? Well, I don't think that celebrities have the cachet that they once did, certainly not in the political space. And I think it's pretty easy to see why. Let's just start with the obvious. If you're watching or listening to this right now, you may be directly impacted by the Biden administration. Gas prices are too high. Inflation is through the roof. Illegal immigration is causing changes within our culture. I live just maybe 15 or 20 minutes away from Aurora, Colorado. And of course, in Aurora, there are gangs taking over entire apartment buildings. Now, the news may think that's a nothing burger, but if you live there or near there, no, it's not. It's a big deal. But if you're a celebrity, well, you live in a gated community, or you don't care about the high prices of food because you've got a lot of money. And it may be a nuisance, but nothing more than that. Same with filling up your gas tank. I can't believe the price. It's gotten so crazy. Swipe that card, fill up your tank, you're on your way. It doesn't affect the rich and famous like it affects the rest of us. And for that reason, I think that the celebrity endorsements are just falling flat. They're a bit tone deaf. I also think we're just exhausted from celebrities pushing their political opinions down our throats. Now, if it happened once in a while, if it happened every few weeks, not a big deal. We're a pretty accommodating people. But if it's again and again and again, every other tweet, every other post on Instagram, every other news story, it's just exhausting. And I think people are exhausted by it. The celebrity endorsements just don't land the way they used to. And I also think we care less about celebrities in general. Listen, if Brad Pitt walked into the coffee shop where you're trying to get a cappuccino, you're going to turn your head. You might look at him. You might even ask for an autograph. I get that. He's a superstar. But I think that stars in general are overexposed. We see them on talk shows. We watch them on social media. Maybe they share a favorite cooking recipe on Instagram. we just know too much about them. It feels less special these days. Now, I think an exception to the rule for years has been Jack Nicholson.
Remember the scene with Jack Nicholson with a football helmet?
Superstar, great talent, big time actor. And he didn't do all the publicity. We didn't see him as much as the other stars. So even just catching a glimpse of him at the Lakers game, it felt magical in a way. It's Jack Nicholson. How's it going, Jack? He looks good. And that's why when he showed up at the Oscars, often in the front row, it mattered. And I miss Jack. I kind of hope he comes back at least for one more Oscar ceremony. Be great to see him again. So that's why I think the celebrity endorsements just don't have the cachet that they once did. But that's just one part of the fallout from the election and Hollywood's connection to it. The other, well, I think that falls in the lap of conservatives. You know, in recent weeks, we saw the Daily Wire's film Am I Racist become the #1 documentary of the year and then of the decade. Yeah, for the last 10 years, no other documentary has made as much at the box office as the Matt Walsh film.
Being a white, straight, cisgender man, it's the top of the pile.
I'm on the top of the pile. That's me.
It's astounding. And in recent weeks, you've seen a lot of great sketch comedy from The Blaze, courtesy of their Normal World show and Dave Landau. And of course, there's been other projects as well. We just saw a Reagan movie, which came from outside the usual Hollywood gatekeepers. There's a new docu-series from the Wall Street Journal's opinion section. The first entry is called Get the Jew. It's looking at the Crown Heights riots of New York City in the early 1990s. Powerful stuff. You're seeing all these different platforms finally pushing out content, the kind of content that is not often directly political, although sometimes it is, but it's stories that wouldn't be told by Hollywood storytellers. They just wouldn't go near it. Would anyone make a documentary that was deconstructing DEI like Am I Racist? Of course not. Not a chance. Would you make a documentary that looked at the Crown Heights riots and compared what happened then to the anti-Semitism on full display in America right now? Absolutely not. But the Wall Street Journal opinion page, well, they wanted that story out there. That really matters. So conservatives have this really special moment right now. The technological barriers are falling. Different platforms are pushing out right-of-center content, stories, movies, TV shows. This didn't happen 10 years ago. It wasn't really happening 5 years ago. It's happening now. And to quote the great Dan Bongino, you know what we need? More, much more. Keep it going. This is a cultural moment. The conservatives have the White House. They've got the Senate. They may have the House as well. We don't know yet. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But there's a moment where they have the political momentum. Now it's time to get some cultural momentum. Don't stop making these productions. Don't stop the movie spigot. And by the way, I don't mean ideological content. I don't mean shows and movies that are filled with lectures and hand-wringing. Oh, no. We don't want to go there. So there you go, conservatives. You've got the White House. You've got the political momentum. Now it's time for the cultural momentum. Keep making art. Keep telling stories. As Andrew Breitbart famously said, politics is downstream of culture. Now is the time to learn that lesson and act on it. The Toto family watches Elf every year around this time.
Buddy the Elf, what's your favorite color? Put that down.
Even my teenage sons, who would rather be doing almost anything else than spending time with mom and dad, will sit down on the couch, put their phones away, and watch Buddy the Elf do what he does best, which is, of course, make us laugh. It's just part of our family tradition. We also watch Christmas Vacation with Chevy Chase. We try to squeeze in a Christmas Story whenever we can. And of course, those magical Christmas specials, The Year Without a Santa Claus and Santa Claus is Coming to Town. You know the one. Put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking out the door. Mickey Rooney, no one does it better. That's our tradition. And every year, Hollywood tries to add more and more films around this time of the year that might become part of your tradition. The Christmas Chronicles comes to mind. We're going to get Red One in a few days, which sounds like a clunker, and I don't think it's going to be anyone's Christmas tradition, but we'll have to wait and see. I haven't been able to screen that one yet. But that is the goal, to make a magical, wonderful Christmas movie that you want to watch year in, year out. And it's very, very hard. Those movies are magical, and they come along once in, maybe a decade or so, maybe more. It's just really hard to kind of capture that kind of Christmas Yuletide magic. Well, there's a new film out. It's called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. And I think it's got a fair to middling chance of joining that conversation.
The pageant is sacred.
Special mention to Grace for volunteering to direct the pageant.
But this year, the Herdmans changed everything.
Now.
Why? It's charming, it's witty, it's wise, it's wonderful. It stars Judy Greer, who is never less than excellent, as a mom who's trying to organize and direct a Christmas pageant. I think the title says it all. Turns out there are some local kids in town, so we'll call them ruffians, who somehow managed to get key roles in the Christmas production. This could be disastrous. This could be the end of this 75-year tradition, or the magic of the season and the spiritual message of the Christmas story. Well, maybe they'll have other plans. Well, got a chance to talk with the film's producer, Kevin Downs, about the movie, about how it works into the holiday season, and also about faith-based filmmaking. This is I guess you can call it a faith-kissed film, although I think it's very friendly to secular audiences as well. But Kevin Downs has been part of this particular renaissance in Christian films. Think movies like Ordinary Angels or American Underdog, which was great, by the way. If you haven't seen that one, please check it out. Kevin has been a big part of this faith-based movie revival, and few people know the space better, even if we use different labels to describe it. He'll get into that in a minute. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Kevin Downs. The movie is The Best Christmas Pageant Ever, coming out November 8th. Hope you enjoyed this chat, and then go see the movie. I think you're going to like it. Well, Kevin, thanks for joining the show. I'm just reading that there's a bit of a backstory here behind the film, and that Dallas Jenkins has had this on his mind for quite some time. And of course, sometimes these things take forever to get done. Now they finally are happening. But what was the backstory here, and how did he get the rights to the story? And it sounds like he had a unique way to convince the people who held them that he was the right person for the job.
I mean, this has been a Dallas's dream movie. I mean, I've often heard him say, if there's only one movie I ever direct for the rest of my life, I hope it's The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. And so he got to do it. He and I started talking about it about 4 years ago. And for me in my house, my wife has read this book to my kids every year, Christmas, as long as I can remember. So that it is one of those things where when I told them that Dad was going to make this a new movie, they thought I was joking. And so a lot of pressure for me to not mess this up. So we both have a affinity for the material and a love for the material that is in our homes. And so that always obviously lends well to hopefully making a film that's you're very passionate about and very passion driven. And so we brought it to our partners at Lionsgate, Kingdom Story Company. We've got a first look deal at Lionsgate. They had an affinity for it and fell in love with it. So that really helped. And we put the movie together during one of his breaks because Dallas is the creator, director of The Chosen. And we got it made last winter and now coming out for this Christmas holiday season.
When it comes to a Christmas movie, now, they make many, many more than they used to. I feel like it's almost an assembly line, but every once in a while, a movie just kind of catches the zeitgeist and becomes a holiday staple. Think Christmas Story and Christmas Vacation, Elf. When you're making something like this, which has a lot of the earmarks of just that, it's got the humor, it's got the heart, it's got the soulful spirit. Does that go through your mind that, gosh, this could be something that really becomes part of a tradition like the book has become? Does that weigh into your creative process, or do you have to kind of just push that aside and just go about your instincts?
It does for a second when you start it, but then you got to forget about it.
Yeah.
Because if that becomes your driving motivation, it'll be a letdown. And so, but certainly it's in the back of our minds, like, hey, wouldn't that be cool if, this turned out to be one of those Christmas classics that means a lot to families. And certainly that is the goal. I mean, we made it with a goal that, this is a film that really will introduce the nativity story for the first time to a lot of families, but is also from a beloved IP, with the book and the stage play out of that story. And just something that means a lot to a lot of families because the book means a lot. But then for those that have never heard of the book, I think they're going to discover it and probably want to discover the book after they watch the movie. Thankfully, the movie lives up to the book, so I'm happy about that. That's always hard to do. For us, this is, I think, the first time we've ever had a film that is truly for kids and adults, both.
Yeah.
And so it really kind of hits both audiences. It's not just appropriate for kids; it's actually for kids.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. And so I love that, because then you bring your kids to, the goal is to bring kids to the theater and let them enjoy it and have a family experience and a family moment.
What I liked about the movie, many things I liked about the movie, but the way the nativity story is reintroduced is brought to these rambunctious kids. I know it's the heart of the story, but the way that Judy Greer's character opens it up, makes it relatable, walks through it piece by piece, and just to see the lights go on in their minds is such a, I mean, I'm sure it's the book as well. It's such an ingenious way to kind of go about this. Talk about that. And because I think a lot of Christmas films, they could be wonderful, they could be sweet, they could be funny, but they often push the real purpose, the real meaning of the season behind. This one, it's so front and center, but it's also not in your face. It's a nice balancing act, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to be first and foremost very faithful to the book itself, and the book is very faithful to the nativity story and its telling. We also wanted to make sure that we don't date this, so you won't see cell phones, you won't see period specific clothing or cars that are just entrenched in a specific time period. We wanted this to be accessible to all audiences, whether you're 80 or 8, no matter what, and not really thinking about the time period that you're in, but really thinking about the story itself. And so that was all very intentional. Little things. There's a lot of things. It's one of those movies where when you watch it the second and third time, you'll pick up new things that you didn't discover. You're like, oh, I wonder if they did that on purpose. And more than likely, the answer is yes. We literally belabored over things that you would never imagine that you could belabor over just little points, because it meant so much of how we're communicating certain elements. Like, for example, the scene where we, discover, Bob and Grace go and visit the Herdman kids at their house for the first time. And just every word and every cutaway shot in that scene was just literally belabored over time and again, because it was very important to us how we communicate who these kids are and where they're from and what they're going through.
It's a very funny movie, and you've got Judy Greer and Pete Holmes, who are just funny in their own distinct ways. Talk about the collaboration there. I mean, having a stand-up comedian, having Judy Greer, I mean, she's been so great on Arrested Development and other things. Different comedy styles. Do they offer something new and different? Do they kind of tweak things or improvise on set? What was that like?
The improvisation was nonstop with those two. Oftentimes they just would improvise to get themselves hyped up and ready to go. I mean, it was very fun, even if it was a serious scene or a serious moment, it just is nonstop improvisation. So, which was very cute of them. But the goal with casting those two roles was to try and find people that first and foremost could bring the humor, but also understood how to bring the heart.
Yeah.
And so, because we didn't just want comedians that couldn't bring the heart, that didn't work. But we also didn't want serious actors that couldn't bring the the funny either. And so it's not very many that could. And so what I was definitely surprised about was Pete. I mean, Pete delivered. That's a very hard role, that role of Bob, because he's sort of everyman. I mean, there's nothing specific or, that makes you lean into a certain way to be able to make him uber interesting off the page and jump off the page. But Pete did it in such a way that it was relatable, that you go, okay, I understand this guy. Yeah. I might be this guy in some instances. And then when you see him turn and flip, like he allows his family to be able to go through whatever hijinks, and he just has kind of the commentary. And then all of a sudden he's the heart and the stone, and he's the rock behind the family. And when you see those moments, it's like, okay, everybody wants to be Bob. You're so proud of what the decisions this guy makes, because he's so unassuming. Same with Judy. I mean, Judy, the role that she plays as Grace, you start to root for her so fast in this movie, because you just want her to win. You just feel like she's being forgotten or she just wants to help. She wants to be a servant. She's got a servant's heart, but yet people are just sort of taking advantage of her in a way. And you kind of see that, which makes you want to root for her in so many ways. And so to bring actors that would bring that, I mean, that was all them, to be honest. That wasn't say, hey, act like this. I mean, it was those two that really brought those elements, those key elements to it, that just made you just fall in love with them as they performed.
I saw Pete Holmes in Crashing. It was only 3 seasons on HBO, but really it showed his nuance and what he could bring to a performance. And he was terrific in that. I think you could look at this film on the surface and say, oh gosh, there's some similarities. We do this in A Christmas Story. You got the narration, you got was it Bumpkus twins or sort of the rapscallions of that movie. And then of course, these here are much more front and center, but do you try to kind of acknowledge that and kind of push against it and make sure it has its own identity? Is that something you worry about or
yeah, this one we didn't really worry about it. Our main concern was to be very faithful to the book. And so the daughter, Barbara Robinson's daughter, because Barbara obviously not with us anymore, but she was so proud of the movie. She said, my mom is cheering on the bench right now watching this. She just was so pleased. And that, so we know we nailed the spirit of the book in the film, and then the rest of it will take care of itself. As far as staying away from other films, that wasn't really at the forefront. It was really just making sure that we nailed this story and that people understood what the true heart of this story is.
I was curious, as a film fan, a producer, someone so enmeshed in this industry, are there other Christmas films that you've enjoyed that maybe aren't the obvious ones that we kind of watch again and again, but smaller films, obscure films that you thought, well, that really does capture the season in a way that maybe people just haven't heard about?
That's a good question. Traditional films, I mean, probably Elf and Miracle on 34th Street are probably my favorite films. But, some of the films that we've made, I'm like, this is kind of a Christmas movie, and it's really not. I mean, it's got some of the Christmas themes of it. I think in the back of my head, I've always wanted to make a really true Christmas story that celebrates the true meaning of Christmas. And pleasantly surprised that it turned out to be the best Christmas pageant ever, because I can't say I've had my eye on this for 20 years, but when Dallas brought it up, I'm like, that's a great idea. I mean, I was like, yeah, let's do that. That really makes a lot of sense because I think it's needed. I don't think it's been done, at least not in a long time, as far as a movie like this that kind of brings back the authenticity, the meaning of Christmas in a way that's a very entertaining way, that's accessible to all audiences, and families won't be offended. It doesn't even matter what your religion is. You can watch this and not really, you won't be offended by what's portrayed in it, because it's about small town America. Yeah. And it plays out some of the tropes that we kind of fall into by assuming that certain people are this way or that way. And so those moments, of course, are funny when you turn those moments on their head. So, but yeah.
What I found, I mean, one of the key elements here is redemption, and these kids seem so troublesome, and they are, and then of course the arc of the story shows something more profound and more opening. And I think a lot of Christmas films maybe miss that there's something nourishing in a way. And we all love Elf. I watch it every year. I have no problem with it. It sort of is what it is, and it's wonderful. But I do think that there's a difference here. This film's, it's almost like it's Elf is like cotton candy, and this is maybe a full blown meal.
And I think because there's not many stories that are out there that can do that. I think Christmas Pageant is one of those stories that actually allows you to be able to dive into both realms, right? As far as the true meaning of Christmas and the fantastic, whether it's some of the traditions of Christmas and some of the things that we just think are Christmas, and combines them all together in a way that is accessible and pleasant and all of those things that you hope for. So to me, it's about story and having that right. I mean, I'm sure there's TV movies that attempt to go after some of those things, but then, it's typically about bad sweaters and bad hair and the things that we don't really care about at the end of the day.
I think it was maybe a decade ago, I was on the set of Mom's Night Out. And, at the time, I know that the term can be troublesome, faith-based movies, faith-friendly, whatever you want to label this sort of genre. It's just been so fascinating to me to watch it as a critic and as a journalist. It's grown, it's exploded, it's matured, it's evolved, it's gone in different directions. We've had Nefarious, which was a horror movie that was sort of faith-based in its own unique way. And obviously this is an area you work in. What are your thoughts on this in this arena? I mean, is it even fair to call it that? I mean, so many faith-based.
Let me give you my thoughts. I think it's funny that filmmakers try to buck against phraseology, for lack of a better word. I'm like, hey, and call it whatever. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, at the end of the day, I'm making films that have a specific purpose. So for my career right now as head of Kingdom Story Company, it's about making films that showcase the power of the gospel, whether in true life stories or in books. And that's what it's about. And so whether they're classified as faith-based, whether they're classified as family-friendly or faith adjacent or whatever, it actually doesn't matter to me. It doesn't offend me. I'm good with all of it. Because as long as the stories that I'm trying to make are consistent, then to me, that's what counts. I actually get it. Like if we have, we, for example, it was hilarious. So of course, we attached our names to Whitebird, which recently came out. And some journalists were confused. They're like, is this faith-based? Like it's only because we were attached to it. Right. And so, but again, let people have that discussion and decide what is faith-based and what isn't faith-based. There's nothing wrong with that. And at the end of the day, we're telling stories that are creative stories that people are really getting behind, that are told in very creative ways, very authentic ways. And that's to me what it's about.
Before I let you go, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up The Unbreakable Boy, which is coming next year. I've just heard so many interesting things about it. Give me your perspective. What can we look forward to? And it sounds like a very unique and special movie.
Yeah, Unbreakable Boy is really a great film. I mean, if you loved Wonder, just about this feel-good story about this young male protagonist, that's what Unbreakable Boy is. It is a quick journey. It's a quick ride. It's going to make you cry, make you laugh. The actors' performances are incredible. We shot it a couple of years ago, but we held on to it because we wanted to make sure it was the right time to be able to release it. And so it's coming out in February in theaters. And again, one of those films, it's very consistent with what our thematics are in our films that we make. Unbreakable Boy is definitely consistent in that, meaning it will give you this rush of hope through this true story. Unbreakable Boy is actually a true story about this young kid and family, and the kid battles autism and what he goes through and how the parents see a new perspective on life through the lens of their 12-year-old son. Yeah. And so I love the film. I'm so proud of it. I can't wait for it to come out.
Gotcha. Well, that's next year, but this season, we've got The Best Christmas Pageant Ever coming out November 8th. Check it out. A wonderful cast, a sweet film. I laughed a lot. I don't laugh a lot at movies these days. It's got tons of heart, tons of things you can share with the whole family. And if I'm a betting person, I guess it's a tall order to kind of join the pantheon of great Christmas films that people watch every year. But this one's got a pretty good shot. So congratulations on the film. And I look forward to talking to you next year about The Unbreakable Boy.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.
Bada bing. Gabagool. Gumadas. Yeah, I'm binge watching The Sopranos again. It's such a great show. And just reliving it is reminding me of how essential it was to the TV canon and how it changed television forever, really. It really brought up episodic TV to a whole new level. But, the show, while it's great, and I'm happy to watch it all over again, it's a bit dark at times. There's a lot of violence, there's cheating, there's bloodshed. It's a bit heavy. So I try to balance out watching the old shows with another series that's a bit lighter, a little bit fluffier, a little bit more romantic. The show is called Nobody Wants This, and it's a new entry from Netflix. It stars Adam Brody and Kristen Bell. They play a rabbi and a shiksa, that's the term they use in the show for a non-Jewish woman, who happen to be falling in love. Now, of course, that's complicated because they come from very different backgrounds. He's a person of deep faith. She doesn't really have much faith at all. She's a podcaster who does a lot of sex talk. They seem like a horrible match on paper. But as a famous and sometimes creepy director famously said, the heart wants what it wants. And that's the gist of the story.
Noah.
Did you know there's a rabbi here?
No shit.
Yeah.
Where?
He has a beard, and he was definitely judging me.
Sounds like a rabbi.
Great. Now I'm 4 episodes in. I'm loving it. There are 10 episodes in all. And as luck would have it, I guess the people are watching it and enjoying it as well, because Netflix already approved a second season. And given the colorful characters, the nature of the romance, the chemistry between the leads, I can see this one lasting a while. At least I hope it does. And I hope it stays at this high level. So why does it work? The person behind the series lived through something very similar. I guess she had a relationship with a rabbi. And I think drawing from those real world examples gives the show a texture, a flavor, a sense that you don't get with normal TV shows. So that works in its favor as well. And I have to say, the first kiss of the main character is not a spoiler. It happens pretty early. It'll buckle your knees if you're an old softie like I am. It's good stuff. You just love to see a great rom-com. Two characters falling in love. It's just, no matter what your age is, it always feels special. So if you're watching a lot of dark stuff these days, if you want something a little bit different, if you just love romantic comedies and miss them in the big screen because they don't make a lot of them these days, why don't you check out Nobody Wants This? Sweet, it's charming, it's fun, and what's wrong with falling in love all over again? That's never a bad thing. Well, that's it for the show this week. I appreciate you watching the Hollywood in Toto podcast, whether it's on YouTube or Rumble or just listening on iTunes or your favorite podcast provider. And if you can, spread the word. Give us a share, a like, a subscribe. Do all the things that help push these shows out into the algorithms. Now go out and have a great week. And no matter how the election made you feel, just know that we're all Americans. We're all in this together. Let's just hope for a better, brighter tomorrow. And of course, a wonderful weekend. See you next time.